Hi, I'm John Clune from STAAH and welcome to Blah Blah at STAAH. Today I have a really unique visitor to our chat and his name is Mauro Risch. He's a hotel photographer. Mauro is the preferred photographer to 5 of the top 10 hotel chains in the world and 4 Aussie-owned hotel chains as well. So Mauro, welcome to Blah Blah at STAAH.
Thank you, John. Pleasure to be here.
Mauro was born in Rio de Janeiro, evidently in Brazil. He started life after school in medicine, and then he had a bit of a break and he came back, resumed his university studies, and then followed his hobby into photography. Perhaps you'd like to kick off with us just talking about how your evolution ended up in hotel photography. I know I've summarized it, but a little bit more. And how did you kick off in the hotel photography part?
Okay, it's very interesting because I think more often than not, we think that we have control over our careers. I don't think I have ever had any control over my career. When I first started in photography, I actually had a dream of becoming a National Geographic magazine photographer. But then the first job came over to shoot for a bank with gold bars and precious metals. And that's the first commercial job I ever did in my life. And from there, I ended up working mostly for advertising agencies for many, many years. I still work with a few advertising agencies. But then late 90s, I was invited to do a job for a Japanese hotel chain to shoot a hotel. It's a Caesar hotel in Rio. It was quite successful. We had a very nice result of that campaign. And they asked me if I would like to shoot other 7 hotels in 7 different countries. Do you really need me to answer that question? So we did go ahead. It was quite a big team. I think it was a very luxurious time when it comes to budget because my team was a very big team. We had 2 assistants. I had an executive producer that would go before the team arrived in the hotel, Argentina or in Costa Rica or in America. And was really, really good experience and great time. Slowly, hotels and resorts started to become a big part of my work, of my career. So until now, I have no plans on changing it unless COVID doesn't allow us to work at all. But until now, I have no complaints. It's been really a blessing.
You have therefore seen the change in the landscape of the requirements of hotel photography from, I guess, pardon my mistakes here, but the Nikon SLR cameras, Canon or whatever, and then moving into perhaps the smartphone era, drones. And so the landscape of hotel photography, resort photography has changed, but also even in the medium-sized hotels and motels seeking to get an advantage. So how do you see that landscape? How's that changed and where is it sitting at the moment?
Look, I think just like photography itself, hotel photography has changed. Yes, we're always adapting the media, the technique, but one thing has not changed is the need to tell a story. So telling the story is the most important thing out of all of it. We still have to sell and market and get bookings and reservations for the properties. So we need to communicate, we need to freshen up the image galleries all the time as often as possible. People who book hotel rooms and who are travel shoppers have become very savvy. They know now what to look for. We are visually savvy now, everyone. Even with Zoom conferencing, we are starting to think more like a movie director. How am I looking on the screen? Is my framing right? How about the lighting? What are the elements in my picture? So everyone is really aware of all the elements that are involved into visual construction. And for the hotels, it shouldn't be any different. Yes, we do have phones. We do have great phones. I love my phone. I always get the latest model of the iPhone available. But the answer to that kind of thing is really, the most important thing is you should have a professional or someone with trained eyes behind the camera, whatever the camera is, to get perfect images. The person behind the camera is still the most important and vital piece of the whole puzzle.
Yeah. The involvement of 360-degree video or virtual tours and the use of drones, how is that encapsulated in your recommendations to any size hotel or motel?
I think it's a great tool. It's just one more way of telling your story. It's probably the most immersive way of telling your story, of describing your space or your conference room or your accommodation room type. I think it's fantastic. It's not the only one. It's a complementing way of telling your story. And look, I'm a big fan. I love it. I've been using it and recommending it for many, many years. But I think now we are at a mature stage where the internet is good to show it, and people are on a point where they can enjoy and understand what's being shown there. I think it's great. I love 360s. You have to be aware of how much time travel shoppers have available to be enjoying going from one room to the next, changing angles. This is something that we have to be aware, because the most expensive commodity that we have to deal with now is time. It's our travel shoppers' time. How do you direct that to the best use of what you have available?
With your diversity of background and where you came from in terms of not only country to Australia, but in terms of career and that pathway, you must have some very cool stories to share with us. And you and I have shared some time before, but I'd love to hear the story about we'll call it a brush with fame. Have you had the celebrity encounter in shooting in a hotel, or perhaps, while we'll protect the innocent, any embarrassing stories you've got to tell? Brushes with fame or embarrassing stories? We
have incredible stories. Yes, there are many stories around it. It's been many decades of photography happening everywhere, mostly in Brazil and for the last 10 years in Australia. But there are things that I think that are very interesting from my perspective, that there are cultural differences, especially between Brazil and Australia. So things like coming from Brazil, where it's a very sensual culture, where walking in bikinis and very little clothing is not a problem, is accepted. And shooting in Australia in a 5-star resort for the first time for a massive world chain, we were shooting models, and having the director of sales next to me, I was shooting the model, gorgeous model, probably one of the most beautiful ladies that I've photographed here in Australia. And the director of sales was next to my ear the whole time. Mauro, you can't shoot that. That's too much skin. That's too much skin. It's not going to be approved. It's not going to go to the website. Don't do that. But, you know, coming from Brazil, of course you can say sex sells, but this is not what we're talking about. We want to make the images appealing and interesting and catch the shopper's eyes. So sometimes the strongest images are the ones that will capture the person who's booking a room and make them book that room. But it's interesting how culturally we're different, but at the same time, I can see now after 10 years that Australia is getting closer to that experience that I had in Brazil. Of course, it's never going to be the same, because different cultures, Latin American cultures and Anglo-Saxon cultures, they're very different in a way. But visually, we're getting closer and closer. Things like photographing food and alcohol, for example, beer. When we did beer shots in Brazil, the color was like very vibrant. Everything was very vibrant, even color of skin, sunrise, and things like that. Everything was very in your face. Now I see most of the visual approach in Australia getting to that point as well. We are allowing ourselves to be more vibrant and more intense. But one thing that still is very different in both ways is when it comes to advertising in Australia, for example. There's a lovely approach that I always think, and that I love that, is the fact that we still want to be honest and real, which is very different to advertising in other parts of the world. And we are always conscious of not being deceiving, not being of overselling or over-promising and under-delivering. I like that. I love the approach in Australia that I've learned myself to just undersell just by a little bit, or sell as it is. And then when the customer comes in, they say, wow, Australia is the land of the wow. Everything in Australia, you come to any place in Australia, we just don't really know that, but Australia is probably the most beautiful place in the world. And we just say, yeah, how about we go to Southeast Asia? I'm not going to mention places, but Australia is just too good, just too beautiful. We don't need to go anywhere else. Everything in here is just gorgeous, and we could go with that.
In that context, would you say that Australian hotels of all sizes and accommodation providers, including B&Bs, do you think that we are paying enough attention to the professional photography side of things, or do you just see, your heart must bleed when you see websites that have pretty poor photography? So where do you see us sitting in that landscape?
I think we are going into the right direction. I think the visual aspect of sales channels are evolving quite a lot. Not everyone is getting there yet, but in 10 years since day one, when I arrived in Australia, to today, I see people are aware of the importance of visuals. That's fantastic. I love that. We can always improve, but I'll never forget how when I came to Australia first time and I was talking to a hotelier, a very successful hotelier, and he probably owns then more than 12 or 15 properties at that time. And we were discussing a few things about how one of the websites, one of the properties had some old images. And I suggested, well, what do you think about doing new images or refreshing your image gallery? And his answer was, why do I need new images? These photos were done 10 years ago. So when he replied to me like that, I was kind of gotten by surprise, and I didn't have an answer. Because if he thinks like that at this day and age where the pace of things is so fast, maybe we should go to another conversation, to a different level. But I'm aware now that the cycles are shorter. In the old times, people used to refresh their image galleries every 5 years, between 5 to 10 years. Then it became a shorter gap. Every 2 years, image galleries are being freshened up, or at least some updates are being made. And some of the brands that I work in Australia, they're going really at the top level. They update almost bi-monthly. Every second month, they say, Mauro, I need you to come over here because we have new furniture in the penthouse. We changed something at the lobby area. So the common areas are different. We changed the lighting. Can you come over and take new photos? So I can see kind of a separation between these two approaches. Some brands are really aware of the need of keeping it fresh, and some have other problems to take care of. I understand. I'm not judging it, because it's every brand and every property is different.
But even the small and medium-sized hotels, again, larger motor inns, regional properties, whenever your recommendation to them, I guess, is what you're saying is, hey, you change your lamps, your bedspreads, your chairs, your carpet, whatever it might be, go and take some photos, and you're okay with the smartphone, yeah?
It's hard for me to say I'm okay with the smartphone, because you don't know what you're losing until you feel the effects of it, until the effects show up. Yeah. I'm not a fan of doing everything with any tool by any means. I think the quality should always be a main concern. But if there's no other way...
Maybe they talk to you, or they talk to a regional photographer. Invest some money. That's what you're saying. Be prepared to invest, correct?
But I agree with you, but at the same time you don't know how much you're losing in sales until you make the changes. That's the surprise that I always have when I'm talking to most hoteliers around, and they tell me how much improvement they had in click-through rates or ranking positions after they've changed to the new images. It's surprising. I'm actually happy with the ones that come to me and say that that's what happened. But who am I? I can't judge. Many successful property owners are doing so well that we're not here to judge anyone. They know what they're doing. I'm sure that they're 100% ahead of me.
Just going back in terms of your career, what would be the most exciting shoot you ever did, or the most challenging? Maybe exciting, yeah.
I'll tell you about places. One of my favorite places that I've been, and I don't think I would have ever been to this place if I haven't moved to Australia, was a photo shoot in the Cook Islands, especially in Aitutaki Island, which is, Rarotonga is the main island where you land when you visit the country. And Aitutaki is another hour and a half in a small aircraft to reach. But the place is just paradise, and it needs no Photoshop. You need to enhance nothing. Just go there and do whatever, any place you aim with your camera, you point and shoot, it's going to be like a poster. It's just unbelievable, and it was amazing. One of my favorite shots ever was done there. But there's all kinds of things, and small properties also are great, because I love knowing Australia, regional Australia. So Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria, I've had the chance to go and shoot for an American chain that owns properties in these 3 states. There are motor inns, or old motor inns, and people are just amazing, unbelievable. Sometimes you have one of them really on your neck, breathing on your neck the whole time, and say, Mauro, is this right? He's anxious because he probably didn't have a photo shoot for the last 20 years. So when he's actually having one photo shoot, he wants everything to be right. And it's like their lives depend on that. So I want it to be really great. But it's funny because you can feel that pain. You know, there's a lot of pain in the industry. Any industry these days is going through a lot of pain. But after working more than 10,000 hours with hotels, you become a little bit of an expert. You understand the pain points they go through, how to tell the story. What do the customers come back to them and say, well, I didn't like this because the room was deceiving. I didn't like the lighting was not shown correctly. So I can definitely help them with that and add value to whatever they want to show. So it's fun. It's a personal experience every single time. There's no 2 properties the same. Every property is absolutely unique and fantastic to be partnering and being able to tell their story.
So in this world of photography and the journey you've taken, so how about, what are the things on your bucket list you haven't done? And if you stopped doing photography tomorrow, what would you do? If you were allowed to wake up tomorrow morning and go, I could be anything I want, what would you do?
It's a very scary question, I'll tell you, because I wake up every day and I see myself as a photographer. It's part of my identity. Even the hat, you see, the hat is part of my photographer identity. But the one thing that I would love to be able to develop a career. If there was no other way to still be a photographer tomorrow, I like to be a rhythm and blues musician, especially if I could be a saxophonist. That would be fantastic. I would be happy for the rest of my days. But again, if I die a photographer in a few years' time, I'll die a happy man.
And any two things on your bucket list that you would like to do, A, before you die and before you stop becoming a photographer?
Well, one thing I really want to do, and Australia has inspired me to do that, is hop on a caravan and drive around Australia. This is one thing I will do. I convinced my wife already to do that. She's okay, she's on board. This is one thing that is on top of my bucket list, to really know Australia, and you know, these 2,000 kilometer roads where there's nothing to do, red after red, outback in every single scenery. And the other thing, I want to spend some time in Alaska. That's the one thing also that I haven't had the chance to do yet.
So we're going to head towards the end on this great chat. And I'm curious to ask you, as a snapshot, you've been in Melbourne permanently since 2007. So the question is, are you still a football man or an AFL man?
I love footy. Is my favorite sport in Australia. I really enjoy. I have a cousin who's a Carlton Blues fan, and he has taken me to many games, and I really enjoy the sport. It's fantastic to watch live at the MCG. I don't think there's anything more exciting than that. But football, Brazilian soccer, yeah, that's in my blood. I can't say no. When it's World Cup, or even now when we had the Olympic Games where Brazil just made the gold, that was like suffering to the end. It was amazing. It was exceptional. But again, I am a footy lover now. I really enjoy footy.
Good. If you had 3 key snapshot points to give to accommodation hospitality providers about their photography, what would they be?
There's a lot of things I could suggest. But the one thing that I would really be focused on, and that's result of all the surveys and research that I get from the data from the OTAs. I do get a lot of information from them. One thing that is the most important and is decision making for most people booking a room is getting a perfect shot of your accommodation room type. That's the key point. That would be the number one thing. Although people think that it's not the sexiest thing when you're shooting a hotel because it's just an empty space, don't worry about that. That still is your strongest point when it comes to sales. Now, there are so many other things that we want to sell, you know, the F&B, show the food and the drinks and the experience and the pool with models, with gorgeous women and men enjoying the view. Yes, there are so many stories, and you can use photography, you can use video, but if you are not so sure about what you can do to start with and you want to really find your way, I would start with the basics. That's my personal recommendation. Start by representing your rooms the best possible way. Clean, spacious, a lot of natural daylight, and that's it. That's a very good start. If you can cover that, you're on your right direction.
Put a bit of personality to the person we're having the chat with. So, are you a wine or a champagne man?
Wine, red wine always. Shiraz is my favorite grape. Malbec in Argentina, Shiraz in Australia.
Would you say you're a snowman or a beach man?
Beach.
I answered it earlier, but you're iPhone or Android?
I have had the chance to be an Apple ambassador for many years in Brazil. So I'm an Apple fanatic. So iPhone forever. Yes, everyone in my family, iPhone.
Here's the trick question: Alaska or Hawaii?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I have had the chance to be in Hawaii with my whole family. It was amazing, but on my bucket list now, top thing is Alaska. I really need to spend some time in Alaska and take my camera and enjoy the whole thing. It looks like a dream for me. I will have to spend some time there someday.
Mauro, again, I appreciate the time you've given to joining us at BLAAH BLAAH at STAAH. I thank you for your wisdom and the guidance you offer all hotels, and I wish you, and we will wish you, a very safe time and stay healthy.
My pleasure, man. It's been a pleasure.